And welcome. Welcome everyone to the Impact Team 2021 Breakthrough Series. I am Blossom Johnston. I'm the founding partner and director of Idaho Partners for Good. And today's breakthrough workshop is by my good friend Roma Bose. And just before I turn it over to her, I just wanted you to know that the purpose of these, we're trying to be very strategic about the way we grow Idaho Partners for Good. And our purpose is to educate and recruit potential and current partners while highlighting the impact team's best-in-class knowledge. So we've got a group of independent consultants that have come under the umbrella of Idaho Partners for Good, and they're doing double the good by being part of our organization. And when we deploy them into our clients, then a portion of their fee is retained by our nonprofit to help us fund our work. So we want to be a sustainable model for nonprofits, and that is one of the ways we're doing it. So today, we want to get the word out about the impact team because it's a very new concept. And we are ready. The people that are a part of the team are ready to help because they will definitely help your business gain a competitive edge. So let me give you a little bit of information about Roma. Roma's superpowers are her ability to engage high wealth individuals to give effectively to achieve the outcomes that they care about. She delivers successful frontline fundraising outcomes aligned with the priorities of the organization, which, by the way, she just helped do with Life's Kitchen, and Corey Rodriguez is on this webinar. So if you want to ask him any questions about the specifics about what Roma did for Life's Kitchen, you can certainly use the chat function for that. She has her CFRE and her CNEL certification. So essentially what that means is she's an expert in fundraising. She's spent more than 20 years as a global nonprofit expert, which has resulted in millions of dollars that have funded community development, new programs, and has stood up new nonprofit organizations. She teaches and trains on fundraising strategies and best practices. She helps design plans that are based on an individual organization's giving priorities. It might include something like employee engagement, matching gifts, and cause-related marketing. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's a grandmother, and she is a consummate professional. She has personally enriched my life as well as professionally. I love working with Roma because I learn every time I do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over.
Oh, Blossom, thank you. I wasn't expecting that. But I want to add my thanks also to Blossom. Thank you so much for making me a part of this process and for inviting me and engaging me. And nothing is more enjoyable to me and fulfilling to me than helping nonprofit organizations become better. And they become better when they have more money to do the work that they love to do most. So without further ado, I feel that this is going to be a longish session. So I'd like to start because I'd like to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. And I think as a rule, maybe, there are two ways to do this, is to raise your hand at the time when you have a question, and Lavanya will alert me. Or wait till the end. We have plenty of time at the end of the session as well. As you can see over here, 20 minutes allotted to question and answers. And I can also respond to your questions at that point. So, since Blossom has already covered the first 2 points, I'm going to just dive into the session itself. And if you have difficulty hearing me or understanding me, please let me know. Please let Lavanya know, and she'll alert me so that I can go slow or faster or louder or slower, etc. So, the first slide is basically just to make the case. Why are we doing this? And these quotations I picked up, from the website, and they are referenced many a time, not just for fundraising purposes, but also for our personal life plan. And I have found that every time that I have developed a plan for myself in what I want to do in the next 5 years, that I have at least met 90% of my goals for the next 5 years. So planning is definitely a very good thing to do, and I'll show you how to do it for fundraising. There are basically 10 steps to building a successful fundraising plan. The plan is a roadmap, as we know. It's a roadmap to how we will do things, when we will do things, what would be required, what kind of staffing is required, etc., etc. So in the 10 steps is basically, first, what we do is conduct a SWOT analysis to figure out where we are, what is our starting point. And then we figure out what are our organizational needs. Where we are is one thing, but knowing where we have to go is another. And so the plan is basically to build a process from where we are to where we want to be. After that, we are going to learn about evaluating the funding revenue streams, the various revenue streams, basically, what are the different, verticals that we can take in terms of corporate giving, institutional giving, individual, high wealth, women engagement, etc., etc. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about staff resources. So once we know where we want to be, what are going to be our priorities, then we also have to take a look at, do we have staff resources to be able to meet those goals? We'll talk about that. Next is going to be evaluation of our assets. By assets, I mean, what documents do we have readily available in terms of brochures, concept notes, and things of that nature. We'll talk about that. What is our communication strategy? Is that aligned to our fundraising goal? What kind of technology is required within the department and within the organization, etc. So we'll talk about that. Next is going to be our market and donor environment assessment. So if we build a plan in silos within our own bubble, but we don't look at where the market is going, is the market going up or down, then our plan might not be successful. Impact of the pandemic especially is something that we need to keep in mind. What are the donors thinking, etc. So we'll talk about that. Next is going to be board engagement. Now, this has been a pain point for many, many organizations, not just now, but in the past as well, is, board members are brought on boards to be able to support the organization, help set its direction, provide their talent, time, treasure, talent. But many times that doesn't happen the way you envision. And we'll talk about why and how to address those issues. Next, we will talk about department's budget. So once we figured out all the steps from step 1 to 7, we will really need to sit down and say, okay, do we have the money to do the work that we want to do within the department? And how are we going to get the money if we don't have it now? So we'll talk about that. Number 9 is going to be bringing everything together. Anything that we learn from point 1 to point 8 will have to be then culled down and built into a plan with priorities and measurable metrics and timelines, and allocating responsibility as well for each of those deliverables. And then at the end, of course, is a no-brainer that every quarter, the team should get together and say, how are we doing on the plan? So scheduling time per quarter on the plan to discuss the plan is going to be an important part of this whole thing, because after doing all of this hard work, you just don't want the plan to be sitting on the shelf. It has to be rolled out. It has to be worked. The plan is not going to work by itself. And I see that more than 50% of the people or organizations are very passionate and excited about building a plan, but many a time they lose their way because many things happen along the way. And since they have not scheduled time on their calendars to review the process, the plan, and make the tweaks that are required, that it just doesn't work. So let's dive into the first. Let me take a pause over here and see if anybody has any specific questions at this point. Okay, so let's see. I want to see Lavanya so that I can see her face and her. There we go. Just want to make sure I have Lavanya on the screen. Okay, I'll put you here.
And then no questions in the chat box also.
Okay, okay, that's great. Let's see, how do I bring Lavanya here? So, so SWOT analysis is the first step in the 10-step process. And, we understand what it means. We know what SWOT means. We know that we need to analyze our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's businesses do this all the time, and it's the same principle that we apply in the nonprofit sector as well. So we need to take a very hard look at our strengths of each of these, steps, strengths and weaknesses, which is right up on the screen. I have listed some suggestive strengths and weaknesses related to the work that I am doing within my organization. Some of the things within this whole workshop or session are going to be made up, but they are up there so that they can help you understand what it means. What are the strengths that you're going to list? And for example, over here, we have a very strong brand recognition and visibility in the community where I work. And it has been earned. We are a 5-year-old organization, and we have earned this brand recognition because of our very focused and committed work that we are doing in the primary healthcare space for the underserved communities. What that also means is that since we work with the government, that the government recognizes us, and we are at the table when they're making certain decisions, and we are invited to the table. So that is very good. In terms of donors as well, we are gaining strength year over year. So that's there. Meaningful and well-defined mission and vision. So we need to take a hard look at the mission and vision. Is it clear? Does it make sense for the community? Are we aligned with the community needs? And is our vision realistic? So really need to take a look at that. If not, it can be tweaked. Then strong and steady donor base. Do we have a donor base? I mean, in our case, our strength is that we do have a strong and steady donor base. We might be worried about losing some of them, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We do have a strong and steady donor base. In terms of corporate high wealth, corporate donors and institutional donors, yes. We have very good quality proposals. So we are, the strength is that we have readily available proposals, etc. Another strength is good successes in opening new doors, meaning donors, new donors, right? And these are only 5 that I've listed here, but there are many, many, many strengths that when you do this exercise with your teams, that everybody will come up with a small to big strength, and everything is important to put down, Let's say we have a very strong technology or customer CRM, right? We have a very important board member, or we have a very visible ambassador, right? So everything has to be listed here. Now, moving over to the weakness side, what I listed here is staff turnover. So in the organization where I work, it's a very dynamic organization, but also the nonprofit sector has been very dynamic, which means that there are fewer talented professionals in the sector versus the need. And so, staff tends to stay for a year and a half, and they find a better job or more paying job. And so that's an issue. Staffing gap for 7 months. In my case, I was the only staff person in the department with a support staff, one support staff, with a goal to raise $2 million, which is not enough. And of course, since I work in the US, my work is in India, that the time difference also doesn't help. But in any case, that was a problem. So I listed that here. A lack of support from XYZ department. You might say, okay, well, we are ready to move on, but the communications department does not recognize our donors the way we commit to our donors. For example, in our engagement strategy, we presented to a potential donor that if they give at $100,000 level, they will be recognized over 4 tweets, 1 tweet every quarter. They will be on Instagram. They will be, highlighted on LinkedIn or listed in a blog or things of that nature. And it's not happening. If the communications team is not supporting us in meeting those goals, of course, that's a big weakness. There's a huge gap. And we need to find a solution to how we are going to address that. Some other weaknesses are listed here. I'm not going to go through each of them, but just say delays in updated communication tools. For example, fact sheets and brochures, we don't get them on time. So there's a huge dependency on the communications team to be able to provide that. And then, of course, slow turnaround of proposals for whatever reasons. There may be legitimate reasons, but then slow turnaround means donor loses interest. Opportunities. So what I've listed here is, you may have had certain programs last year that were successful, but there may have been certain programs that were not successful. So for example, we are a primary care focused organization, and we deliver primary healthcare services using innovation and technology and digital health, right? But with the pandemic happening, we saw that the cadre of frontline workers were not prepared. They did not have the tools to be able to deliver services, in the right fashion. What that means is how to quarantine, how to, how to deal with patients from a distance, how to educate patients on maintaining healthy habits and all that. So we had to quickly turn around and develop training tools for our team. We have 500 plus staff in India that needed to be trained. So we quickly turned around and we invested time in developing training tools. We trained our staff, but then we said, so we have this immense resource. How about we train others on this? We tried, and we tried to sell that as a product, but we were not successful because of our brand visibility, that everybody knows that we are here to make systemic changes in primary healthcare delivery. We are not here to provide training. So that was not successful. So just giving you these ideas so that you can relate to what has worked for you and what did not work for you last year. So you need to drop things that did not work. You cannot be selling things that didn't work. And then there was another, so strong prospect network, what is an opportunity. So what happened is, as a result of COVID pandemic, we were able to reach out to donors beyond our existing top prospect list. So what we decided is, okay, we are going to write to everybody, because at this time, people have a better understanding of the need in the communities. So we're going to, and we have contact information. So we're going to send out, expand our prospect network and see what sticks, because people who may have been supporting livelihood, issues or feeding the hungry may now feel that delivering healthcare, primary healthcare, is important as well. So we did that. So that's an opportunity. Now we built our name. More people know us because of that. We did get, I would say, we got 2 new donors because of that, for a total of $300,000. So that was good. So you have to similarly list out all the opportunities that you think. And sometimes you can, this is not the time to do blue sky thinking or, etc. But be very realistic of what opportunities exist because of what happened last year. And I'm not just saying about the pandemic. There may have been many other issues or reasons where you feel that there are opportunities. For example, you have a new board member, right? And you say, oh, that board member has a huge network, so we need to target that board member. So just list down all the opportunities that you see. And threats, oh my gosh. So threats, very, very important, because you cannot build a plan unless you also figure out the threats. So you are making realistic goals or realistic plans. So, so in our case, I'm sorry to say this, but our leadership gets very excited when they meet a new person and they say, okay, and then they want to do everything. They want to do everything. They say, oh, how about we do this? For example, the training module that I talked about, and so on and so forth. So we have to, having a plan like this helps staff to push back on the leadership and say, no, we developed this plan and we're going to stick to it. We don't have time and resources for something new that you are adding. So as you can see, there are several other things I've listed over here that you will have to list as well. Second step is identification of organizational needs and priorities. You cannot be successful in your planning if you do not work with the program team in identifying the organization's needs and priorities. In order to help you, I've designed this table, put in a table here. So what you can do is list your existing programs and priorities that are fully funded and that will continue on in the current year and the next year. Then you list all the new strategic growth programs and priorities. What are the new additions that you want to make? Are they realistic? And do they align with the strategic plan of the organization? So you list those. So for example, in addition to programs, there may be needs for, there may be a need for, organization, overhead costs, or need to support capacity building of the organization. So you list all of those needs, and finance person has to sit in this session as well. Because the finance person has to say, well, if this is the need, we have funds available for this, but we don't have funds available for that. So, and then identify the gap. Identify the gap. So if there's a program that is fully funded, but for this year, but next year there will be a need, then you have to list that down over here. So plus, addition, subtraction, all of that has to happen over here. And if this is not not an hour-long exercise, sometimes it takes a whole day for this exercise. Even for this previous SWOT analysis, it's a full-day exercise. And I have to tell you that building a fundraising plan itself takes at least 2 days. And I have done it with organizations. It's a 2-day offsite exercise where all necessary required people come together and develop this. Which also means that people from other departments, getting them on board also means that they feel ownership of making this plan a success. So, so I backtracked a little bit, but I just want you to say that identify your plans, programs, and then think about what you want to add and what would be the money required for those programs, etc. And here you can do blue sky thinking. You can say, these are essentials, must have, must do, and then these would be aligned with the strategic plan. And the third category would be good to have. If we had the money, then we could do this. So splitting the priorities based on that would also help you come up with a more realistic fundraising plan and a fundraising goal. So spend a good amount of time doing this, because the SWOT analysis and this are very, very integral to building the whole plan. So invite as many people as you think are relevant to this, people from other departments as well, engage them and see, and then again, splitting them into 3 categories: must-haves and good to have, etc. Next item is evaluation of the revenue stream. So now you have your fundraising goal. Let's say you say your fundraising goal has been determined as $2 million. And these are the different buckets within which we have to raise money, because there's a gap in human resource funding. There's a gap in communications team. There's a gap in program funding, etc., etc. So you have everything laid out in front of you for which you need money and how much. And then you do, this is kind of a soul search exercise, number 3, which is what we did last year. So revenue streams, and I've just listed a few, just 4 of them, but there may be more. So let's say you have a very good individual giving program and it's working, right? So you want to keep it, yes or no? You say, yes, you will keep it. Annual giving, yes, it's a no-brainer. Direct mail hasn't worked. Let's say the return on investment has not been great. And the finance person will tell you that we put in this much money, return was this much, so no, let's drop it. And let's move, but then you might also say, let's move on to digital fundraising, right? So then that would move over to the ad column on the right. Online giving, yes, let's promote that. Yes, we will keep that. And then you might want to say, well, planned giving. So when I talk about planned giving and I talk about major gifts, these are 2 areas that I would really want you to consider including in your plan. Why? Because we know that with baby boomers retiring and billions of dollars in trillions of dollars in wealth is exchanging hands, that the younger generation is more interested in engaging in the community. They want to make a real difference, etc. That there is no reason why you shouldn't have planned giving and major gifts or high net worth individual engagements as a strategy. You might want to start small, but definitely add this to your plan. It is going to yield returns, and as you would know, that time invested in relationship building for a corporate gift or a small gift, a $10,000 gift versus a $100,000 gift, it takes the same amount of time, really. So therefore there is no reason why you shouldn't look at big ticket donors and big ticket items. Any questions? I mean, everything is self-explanatory. Board giving. Now I want to talk about board giving here, and Blossom and I had a little exchange on this point, and board giving has been, in my experience, a sore point for most nonprofits. And I would say that stems from the fact that 2 reasons. One is that proper onboarding was not done. So when you are excited about bringing somebody on board, you don't actually tell them, well, we want your time and talent, but we also need your treasure, right? So we avoid talking about money. And that should be included in the onboarding process. So I'm going to, I'm happy to help you in any of these areas, but I'm just going to say here that you need to review your onboarding documents. How are you, and there is a set of documents, right, that board members have to sign. And within that, you have to develop, within your team, and leadership has to decide the threshold for giving. Where I have seen that when I have raised funds, raised funds from, especially from high wealth individuals, and have presented also to corporates and foundations the same strategy, same document, which says we have 100% board giving, it really sticks. You know, when you say 100% board giving, so the goal is that 100% of board members are giving, whatever level. Now that's, it can be anonymous, internal, giving threshold and giving, that is another strategy where you want your board members to give more. It's a very different strategy for encouraging them to step up their gifts, but onboarding has to be proper. And when they sign off, when you tell them to sign off on a document on a dotted, when they sign on a dotted line, it means that they will follow through. But staff, of course, has to follow through. And normally CEOs are responsible for board engagement strategy. Staff supports, but CEOs lead that strategy. Affinity groups, I would also want to highlight. Affinity groups means programs such as women's leadership engagement, or young leaders youth engagement, or young men's engagement, or under 40 club. I mean, you can think of many different ways depending on where you think the community is in their thinking, how are you going to bring them all together? So those are affinity groups. And there's also diaspora giving. So for example, we have a sizable refugee population in Boise that they want to do something to give back. Everybody wants to give back. I'm an immigrant. I want to give back to my country for many different reasons. So there are people who want to give back. So you want to harness that energy. It may not be for giving. They may not be able to give, but they do want to integrate in the Boise community, right? So how are you going to integrate them? They have talent, they have time. So think about those things as well, and I'll be happy to talk to anybody of you on any of these, revenue streams and how to build that. Moving on, let's see, why am I not able to? Oh, there we go. So now you have, by this time, what are your strengths and weaknesses, how you want to grow, what you want to drop, what you want to add, you do have a goal, right? And then you do inside assessment, inside evaluation within the department, right? You may want to add diaspora giving. Diaspora giving is part of Affinity Group. Diaspora means people of a particular country, faith, or normally used for people of same ethnicities is what is diaspora giving. And normally that happens within a country. So diaspora, that is what it is. So let's say you have a staff resource who can handle individual giving and grow that pie. Board giving, yes, you have, but diaspora, you don't know where to start. You don't have a staff resource. So you will need to hire somebody, and therefore you put that in the budget. You say, okay, we need $50,000 to hire somebody at mid-level to be able to do diaspora giving, right? So you go through this exercise based on what you have determined is going to be your priorities. So that's what you do. And then you come up with a sum total of internal budget numbers in terms of human resource. You will also do the same thing. It's also good to have communication team around, because they need to be part of this exercise, where now you have figured out what kind of staff resources you require, but what are the assets that we have available? Assets meaning, like I said over here, fact sheets and brochures and one-pagers and whatever you call it, or white papers, concept notes, and you identify a gap or a need, and you say, well, we do have fact sheets from last year, but the numbers have improved. Impact has gotten better, or maybe our fact sheets need a facelift, right? Or brochures need a facelift. And so you figure that out and you say, well, this is a job that needs to be done, and communications team has to take ownership for that. Concept notes, templates, these are internal. Your department, your writer or a proposal writing person has to take responsibility for that. And allocation of responsibility at this time is going to be very, very important. So you have to have a table, an Excel sheet in place, and allocate responsibility and also a timeline. Who's going to do this by when? Similarly, for proposals, some templates can be available, but basic templates, when available, are really handy when you have to customize proposals for any prospect. Technology needs, for example, like I said, we are only a 5-year-old organization, and I had subscribed to Salesforce early on in 2016, but we were never able to implement that because there were multiple things that we had to put in place. And we've identified that Salesforce is what, in terms of CRM, that we need to implement this year. And we are very actively working on it right now. So that similarly, you might have some other donor management tool that you want to bring in, and you have to allocate resources. And many times you'll have to go back and forth in your exercise on the budget page, right? To add costs, related to any of these things that you are doing. So CRM, again, who's going to bear the cost? Is it the IT department? Or is it the fundraising department? Who's going to bear the cost for CRM? And then who's going to implement, right? So those are, for example, technology needs. On the right side, I have communications requirements. Now, I'm not sure, you may have, some of you may have heard of communication plan. So communication plan is a whole different exercise that takes place, led by the communications department, but there is an intersection with the fundraising team, because who are the people who are going to be using those assets? Mostly it's going to be the fundraising team who's going to be using this. Of course, there are advocacy team and the policy team that will also be using these things, but mostly fundraising team. So you develop your, under the communication requirement, you will need a few things. For example, I have listed here a donor recognition calendar. I talked about a communications calendar, but this is a donor recognitions calendar. So let me explain the difference between the two. So the communications calendar is a 12-month calendar that lists activities that a communications team is going to do every month. Even sometimes it's even broken down into weeks. In the 52 weeks, communications team is going to, for example, in the first week, send a Happy New Year greetings. And the second week, write a blog post, blog post or a story on all the good work done in the past year, for example. In the third week, they're going to post a beneficiary story on LinkedIn, etc. So these are just ideas, but so you get the idea that a communications calendar is built on the work. It's a work plan. It's an actionable work plan that the communications team is going to deliver throughout the year based on the strategic plan, based on the organization's strategic plan and the goal in that plan. For example, we are trying to move towards policy decision making, right? So we've defined our strategic progress in 4 Ps, and 4 Ps means in the beginning, we are a 5-year-old organization. So in the beginning, we had to prove ourselves that we were a viable a viable organization that is committed to the issue of primary healthcare, and it's here to stay. So we implemented a lot of programs, so projects. So the first P is for projects. From there, we moved on to programs. We evolved and we built programs based on the projects, but also new programs, such as a health and wellness center program that we are scaling up across the country, in the northern part of the country. So that turned into a program. The next level, so project, policy, platform. The third thing is moving into a platform. Platform meaning engaging like-minded partners into a platform and becoming a voice for the people who need good quality primary healthcare. So bringing others to the table. So that's our platform. The third P is for platform. The fourth P is policy. The maximum impact that you can have is when you are able to help make policy decisions or make influence in policy decisions based on your own experience, etc. So those are the four Ps. And I know I sidetracked a little bit, but I wanted to tell you that is our strategic plan. And so the communication plan has to align with these four Ps. It has to do, it's not that we are dropping one P for another P, but we are moving up the ladder, so to say, to be able to reach that policy level, right? So the communication plan has to incorporate all of that in the 52 weeks that they are going to be developing their calendar. And that's a whole different strategy, and I don't have enough time to talk about that right now, but donor recognition plan is different. Now, a donor recognition architecture is something that I designed as an engagement tool for potential donors. So largely for corporations. Corporations, we know, they want full engagement from a nonprofit. For example, they want employee engaged, they want their employees to be engaged in terms of volunteering and giving. They want their own name recognition, right? And of course, they do have good intentions of making an impact in the community. So how are we going to recognize them in all of these areas? So a whole plan is designed in which, based on their giving level. So we say, if you give us $25,000, we'll give you 2 tweets in the year. We'll write you a short story in 1 story in a year, etc. And then we increase all of those visibility opportunities for larger donors, so that is a recognition plan. However, like I said earlier, if communications team is not delivering on the commitments that we have made with the donors, then we have to cut a sorry figure. They might not want to give us again the following year. So anyhow, so I'm going to move on. Let me do a time check. Okay.
Roma, there is a question from Jessie, and she asks, "What is policy?"
Oh, okay. So policy decisions, for example, I'll give you an example of India where, of course, nutrition is an integral part of the services that the government delivers in primary healthcare. Just to take a step back, the government of India is responsible for primary healthcare of all its citizens, period. So there is private healthcare available, but according to the Constitution of India, government of India has to provide primary healthcare to all its citizens. So within the primary healthcare services, there are 12 services that have to be delivered, which include reproductive health, maternal health, child care, all of that. And then they've added geriatric care, there's dental, there's yoga for wellness, etc. So there are 12 services that have to be delivered. And nutrition is a big part of it. Nutrition was integrated in the reproductive health and maternal health and, all those areas. However, it was not a vertical by itself. So we decided, but the nonprofit sector that is focused on health decided that we need to advocate that nutrition become part of the primary healthcare services as a policy, right? So that advocacy led to a big policy change within the government And nutrition is now an integral part, a standalone part of primary healthcare delivery in the country. Is that clear? I mean, so now because of that policy change, millions of people are able to get the benefit which the government is paying for. So that's a huge impact, right? So that's what I mean by policy.
There are also some comments about non-financial giving, like giving
Yes.
event sponsorships and yeah, um, made by Kimbra and John. They've talked about in-kind for space, services, and other relevant needs. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So these are not standalone or neglected areas. They have to be part of an integral part of all giving. And as we know with Life's Kitchen, Corey will vouch for that, that is an important part of giving. And it cannot, and it is recognized at the value. In fact, a tax return or a tax receipt is expected for the value of the in-kind amount that is given. So yes, that is an integral part. Now, having said that, if you are referring to the board giving, and what if the board is giving in kind instead of cash? Then, of course, this is going to be an internal decision between leaders. But like I said, since in kind it also has value, and you are providing a tax receipt, that can be counted. However, only talent is not, like I said, even if the board member is giving $100, it still counts towards 100% board giving. So you will have to decide for your own organization what is going to be the threshold for entry to become a board member. So, I have told this story before, and I was telling Blossom the other day, is, the secret for success in fundraising for me personally has been that I am not afraid to ask for money. I am not afraid to ask for money because I get my confidence from the fact that I am also a donor. Whatever I give, if I can give at my level, anybody can give. And I haven't reached where I am today. Suddenly, it has taken years for me to be where I am, but I have been giving all along. I was giving at a certain percentage of my annual income in the beginning, and now I'm giving at a certain level percentage of my annual income. And so board, anybody can give. Anybody can give, and some, we can discuss ways that people can give. I know in our church, people fast for a day, and they give whatever $10 that they have saved that day by not eating that day. I mean, I don't want to go to, into those kind of details, but I'm just saying that everybody has capacity to give. If somebody is unemployed, that is a different matter, right? That is a different matter. There can also be challenge grants or matching gifts. And we all know about those things. Matching gift, if one board member says, I'm going to match anybody's gift at this level. If somebody's giving at $10, I'm going to match it 4 times, or $100, match it 4 times, $100,000 level. So those are many different strategies, and we can talk about those different strategies for engagement. But I think it is important that everybody gives at whatever level, what capacity they have.
Roma, there's a question from Drew. He says, yes, anyone can give, but how do we narrow down our avatar to start to search for?
I didn't understand the question, sorry, but Drew, can you explain that?
Yeah, okay. So yes, anyone can give, but when we're searching for potential donors, we typically, with any form of advertising, we're going to create some kind of an avatar. We're going to target this type of person that we're searching for.
Yes.
How do we narrow this down for fundraising techniques to where we're looking for a targeted audience?
Very good question. So So let's say, of course, I mean, this is in case of individuals, there is a specific strategy for, and there are vendors who will provide you with emails and addresses of people who give within the category, within the framework that you give them. So for example, and tell me if I'm offline, but for example, I needed to reach high wealth individuals of Indian origin who make whose annual income is $250,000 and above, all across the country. And then the vendor came back to me and said that the cost, that there are millions of people, and the cost for that list is going to be, it was going to be like $5,000-6,000. I said, no, my budget is very small. Okay, how about we narrow down to people who have the capacity to give it, or no, whose annual income is at $500,000 and of Indian origin. So he then gave me the list, which was very reasonable. I purchased that list. Of course, 40% of the emails are junk. Which is expected because people change their email addresses and jobs, etc., etc. But so that became my list that I target for my communication strategy, sending them updates and stories. And then there is another strategy for that. You tell them the story 4 times, and the 5th time you make an ask. So that's for individuals. That's how you determine. With regards to board members, there is a matrix that you develop. And in the matrix, you list requirement for the organization. What kind of gaps you want to fill? For example, you would like a finance or a treasurer, somebody to a board member to manage that part of the organization. Then you will have to find somebody who has that talent. Of course, the matrix also includes male, female, race, for diversity, and giving capacity. All of that is done. It's a homework that is done within that matrix, and then people, meaning senior leadership and other board members, they contribute names. They say, well, this person will fit in here, that person will fit in there. Etc. So that's what I meant, onboarding, and then comes the onboarding part. When you reach out to people who you've identified as the right people for the organization, you reach out to them, you know already where they stand, and then in that documents, the folder that you present to them will include their ability, the threshold that you have decided. Now, because you've done this exercise and determined their giving capacity, you will know at what level they can give. And then you would say annual expected gift, let's say $100. And then at bottom, you would say increased giving encouraged, or increased giving will get us to this place, something on those lines. So you have to build that in your onboarding document. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay. Then market and donor giving environment. So like I mentioned earlier, this pandemic has impacted everything that we do, right? So, so some of the issues that we are facing, or we faced, is that during the pandemic, the domestic people who give to local nonprofits nationally, they were giving only, they had changed from giving to, scholarships and things like that. They started giving for basic needs. They started, not everybody, but I'm just saying that primarily when I was talking, I attended some webinars where donors were discussing their giving and how they have shifted. So this comes from that learning that they pivoted. So other things did suffer. And then in case of my international donors, they said they would only give to existing donors. That was one of the challenges I faced, is while I was cultivating new donors, in the latter part of 2019, I was deep into discussion with them about partnering with us. And then come 2020 and March, and they were like, okay, no, we won't be able to go to the field to look at your work. So therefore, we are going to only support our existing donors, grantees. And so, so I faced a lot of challenges with that. And then and larger donors like Gates Foundation, etc. Their investments were going for primary needs, basic needs, but also for the vaccine, So that was the environment. So now that's the issue. How are we going to address that issue is the question, right? In 2021, how are we going to address that issue? Because now we have a vaccine, it's going to be rolled out. So we have to align our 21 strategy based on what the environment is expected to look like 6 months down the road. And so in the first 6 months, you would have to build your strategy, and then in the second part, you have to roll out that strategy. You have to work the strategy. Then, for example, our USAID grant, the US government grant for our programs, it was a 5-year commitment that is coming to an end this year. So there's going to be a gap, and we have to figure out how are we going to fill that gap. So those might be the things that you have to say. A board member may have rotated off, and he's not or she's not interested in giving to your organization anymore. So how are you going to meet that gap? So many different things. So, maybe there was, maybe the organization had to face some negative publicity. How are you going to address that issue? What will be your strategy? In that case, you would engage your board. The board would go and meet with people who are upset or, trying to bring them back. So there will be strategies against each of these issues, right? Now, board and leadership engagement, I talked about this already, but I listed it here as well for you all. There are two major issues: that the board members are not engaged in fundraising, and second is board members are not making financial contributions. So in the second one, we already talked about. The first one is they're not engaged in fundraising is because they hesitate in asking for money. They are accomplished, successful people, and they don't feel comfortable asking others for money. So that has been a problem. But they are not, and secondly, they also think it's not their responsibility. They think they've hired a high-paying person as a chief development officer, and that person should do this job. No. It never works that way. You always, the chief development officer relies on its leadership, and especially board members, to open doors. So how are you going to address that? In the first instance, you would provide a board training. There are trainings. So if you go to the website of Board Source, you will find a number of trainings and training materials that are available for conducting, and this should be a full one-day training. And we can talk about that more if you would like. Then buddy system for visits, that's another strategy. Once you have the training done and you want board members to overcome their hesitation, you can have an active board member go with another board member to somebody within their network who has the capacity to give, or the CEO can buddy up with this individual, this board member who knows somebody who has the capacity to give. So there are strategies like that can be applied. And then board members should know that staff will do all the hard work. Board members should know that staff is willing and able to draft their emails, design their, work with their secretaries, have the secretary send out the emails, and collect responses. and come back to the board member on the status, et cetera, et cetera. There is a whole strategy around that we can talk about, but staff has to be there to support board members because board members are not getting paid for this work. They have other priorities. And so knowing that there is staff support available, they feel more comfortable in asking for money and playing a role in fundraising. Number 8, how are we on time? Okay, another 5 minutes. Fundraising department budgets, like I mentioned earlier, you would have, made notes, good notes on as you're going down this process, the 10 steps. At every step, you would have taken note of funds required. Is communications going to do this? Is IT going to do that? Or is our team going to do this? And now you have all of these numbers on sheets of paper, that you need to bring together. You need to bring together all of those numbers and then build this budget. And you say, we talked about that. There's a gap. We talked about human resource. We need to build that in. We need to board training, offsite will cost this much, lunch, etc. Flying in a board member for training, all of those costs, we need that budget for that. Donor recognition items, many times, we do events to recognize donors, right? And we do plaques and awards and certificates, etc., that they can hang in their offices and things like that. So those cost money. So budgeting in the CRM cost, for example, etc., all of that. So then we say, finance guy will say, okay, this much money is available, but we don't have money for that. And then you come up with your department budget, right? Number 9. Now, like I said, at every step, you would have determined your priorities. These are the things that we are going to do. These are the things we are not going to do. But now you have a solid list of things to do. They may be under, the things to do would be under this category or this category or this category or that category, etc., etc. There are lists of things to do, right? So then within all of those lists, hopefully those are your priorities. You list down all of those 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, it could be pages of priorities. These are the things we have to do. This is the objective. This is the goal or objective that we want to achieve. And then by when. If we don't put a timeline for by when, things are not going to happen. And then who is responsible for it? Who's responsible? And how are we going to measure success? How are we going to measure success? Let's say somebody was supposed to build, update brochures, refresh those documents, right? That's a priority. And the goal is to have refreshed documents, right? By when? By January 31st, January 30th. How are we going to measure? We're going to measure success by measure success that we are able to use that document successfully, or that document is available and we are utilizing it. Who's responsible for this work? One of the staff team members, development department or fundraising department's person has to take the lead on this. And then you can also add another column to say supported by, or dependency on. So who is going to lead it within the department, and the dependency is on communications team, right? In fact, once you have listed all these 10, 20, 30 priorities and by when, etc., you will see that you're actually developing your team's work plan, right? So the staff work plan can be derived from this with a timeline, So moving on, and then of course working the plan. Right then, within your 1 day or 2 day, workshop, you have to come out of it putting scheduling dates on the calendar right there to say, when are we going to review this work plan every quarter? So you might give a mid-March date, every quarter, mid-March to late March, for example. So just schedule, look at your calendars, what are important dates to avoid, and when can everybody carve out time on their calendars to sit down and have a discussion and tweak. The purpose of coming together is not to, to be disheartened and say, well, we did this, but we couldn't do that, or whatever reasons. That's okay. All right, let's rework the plan. Maybe there have been some changes, significant changes that are unavoidable or were unavoidable. So then how are we going to address those? So just make tweaks to the plan and then come back, every quarter. And then at the end of the year, you will feel so good. You'll feel so good about having this. And I'm telling you, you will be successful in your fundraising, and you'll be able to, at the end of the year, be able to build your next year plan. I'm telling you that by Q4 and like December of 2021, you will be able to do this exercise and ready for 2022. So I'll stop there and I'll take questions.
Roma.
Yeah.
Okay, so boil it down. Somebody's getting ready for a donor meeting. What is your top tip for getting over the fear of making the ask, and how do you prepare yourself for that meeting?
Okay. Wonderful, very good question. So let me give you an example of my personal experience. Okay, Pfizer. So since we work in healthcare, primary healthcare, and Pfizer is a big player in India, as in other parts of the world, but Pfizer is a big player in primary healthcare and has been in India. I did my research. First, I did my research to say which are the top 10 pharmaceutical companies that are doing business in India. And then I said, narrow down to which ones are focused on primary healthcare and in which aspects of primary healthcare. There are, like I said, 12 services. Within the 12 services, what kind of medicine, what area of health are they addressing? Cancer is one, okay? Non-communicable diseases, and narrowed it down to cancer. And then, of course, there's a type of cancers that they have medicines for. So then I did my research on who is the right person for me to connect with. And then I reached out to them and shared and customized my email and my subject line. Very important. Your subject line is very, very important. So and subject line, as well as my message, to say, I would like to give you, I would like to, I'm now right now, you can't meet, but you can say, I would like for this is the purpose why I'm meeting you, given alignment with our mission and purpose, there is a need for this, this, and this in this particular state. I would like for it to give you an overview of all the work that we are doing, and then specifically about our strategy for cancer eradication. And so it piqued their interest, and they say, okay, we want to hear what you have. The plan that I have is a district-based or county-based cancer continuum of care model. It's a cancer continuum of care model that we designed. For a particular county, we want to test it out in one particular county, any county, and then we want to take it to all other counties and across the country. So we want money for piloting that. So then I customize my slide deck based on that objective. So the first part of my slide deck is going to be about the organization, our accomplishments, recognitions by the government and other partners. And then I'm going to come down to specifically the plan I have in mind. And then walk them through, just highlights, walk them through the plan. and then let them talk about it and let them say, okay, well, we are interested in that, I'm not interested in that, etc., etc. Can you give me more information on this or that? Or no, not cancer. Could you do something on nutrition? Okay. So then, of course, you take the conversation forward. So in preparation, when I would do in-person meetings, I always carried a folder. And you have to have a buddy system for an in-person meeting. Even for online discussion, you have to have a buddy system. So what I mean is that, so let me walk you through a meeting. So I prepare a folder. In that folder, I have the two people's business cards attached in the folder, mine and the other person's. I have a fact sheet. I have an overview document. I have a tentative agenda printed out, which I may not have consulted them on the agenda, but I have an agenda. I print it out. It's on the top, etc. And those are my basic documents that I put in every folder. And then when I go to the meeting, before the meeting, I talk to my buddy. It could be the CEO. And I say, well, this is the background on the individual we are meeting with. I know this person, this is their family, this is, they love dogs, they love golfing, whatever I have done research and I found out about them. And they have had a bad year, for example, in terms of reputation, but they are coming out of it. They have addressed the issue, etc. I think they would be ready to give, but if we talk about 1, 2, and 3, these are the 3 things that we can talk about, they would be willing. So we do this exercise. This pre-planning is extremely important, very, very important. So that when you sit in front of the potential donor, you start with the chit chat and you talk about golf. Let's say, there's a PGA golf tour going on, and that's something common. You start by warming up the room, warming up the conversation, and then then you talk about why you are there. And then at the end of it, so you already have points that you're going to discuss. So if one person forgets something or is going on a different track, the other person can jump in and say, oh, by the way, I wanted to say that. So that all points are covered in that conversation. And then you also should decide what are the outcomes you want to see from that meeting. So you would have said, we actually want $100,000 from this meeting, and we want this person to join our board, and we want them to volunteer in whatever, etc. Or their company to give us in-kind services. So these are the 3 outcomes you want to see. And in that meeting, you have to make sure that you are covering each of these 3 points. And by the way, kind of a way, like, well, you have a very flourishing, PR agency, and we feel that we really lack in that area. And we're wondering if there would be somebody in your organization, in your company, who could lend us a few hours and help us. Easy as that. And, so have your ask very clear, learn about the individual, learn about the company. And, I think I have shared a prospect profile in the past, and I'll be happy to share with anybody that we do prospect profiling, and everything goes into that profile. My CEO is very busy, doesn't know about everybody. So as I'm driving with my CEO to the meeting, on the way or before, a day before, I tell my CEO, here's a profile for you to read from. And my CEO goes through the whole profile, everything, and is ready for the meeting. So those kind of homework that has to be done behind the scenes. Fundraising is easy only if staff does the homework. And then who goes into the meeting is also important. Sometimes you don't want to take the CEO to a meeting because you want the CEO to be the closer, the one who closes the deal. So in the first meeting, you might not want to take the CEO. You might want to take the CEO, in the second meeting, or bring the CEO on a phone conversation, etc. So just do your homework.
Roma, I have 2 questions. One is from Blossom that says, how are virtual donor meetings different? And there's one that has popped up right now from Brian And he says, what are your observations about starting a larger campaign right now with COVID, political unrest, etc.? And he says, we need to start a building campaign, but it seems to be a bad time.
Yeah, so I think that yes, definitely not the right time, but at the same, but you can also, campaigns have phases. There is a quiet phase of the campaign, and then there's a public phase, right? So in the quiet phase, you can do your planning, and you should wait maybe 6 months and do your the first 6 months for your quiet phase. It takes a lot of preparation for the quiet phase, a huge amount of preparation. So do not suspend the idea, keep it open, because you, on the one hand, you were talking about pandemics and issues and political environment. On the other, have you seen how the stock prices have gone up? People of wealth have made a lot more money. People have made a lot of money. So it's not a bad time to ask for money. It's not a bad time. It's you have to make sure that you're asking the right person for the right amount of money at the right time. So, for example, you have to look at what is your mission and vision, and their product. What are you selling? What is your product? Align it with the right person. Do all your homework. Align it with the right person who has the capacity to give. Let's say nutrition, right? There's a need for nutrition or food or whatever, and you have Simplot in your backyard, so to say, right? You have Albertsons, again, food, health. So you might narrow down on organizations or companies that would have a focus on nutrition. And then you target them because you are focused on nutrition. So alignment is very important. Doing your homework is important. And who knows whom? Very, very important. Who knows whom? So you recruit board members of wealth, of means, of reputation, etc. Why? Because they have a standing in the community. And if those board members go with you or help you open the doors or go with you on a meeting, that the success rate is going to be in 100% or 99%.
So I'm going to ask Corey to lean in to that question as well. Corey, are you still out there? If you are, that's something that we were working with Life's Kitchen on, is to launch a capital campaign in the middle of a pandemic. And so I'm curious about your thoughts, Corey.
Well, we were certainly scared also, because it was not in our plan, and it kind of pushed back our move date a whole year. But like Roma said, we're in our quiet phase, but we've been really fortunate that the Partners for Good helping us out and getting us in that direction. But we've been really fortunate to have the people who are helping us, like board members and whatnot, they're going out and talking to those people. So it comes back to the relationships. And so we've been able to pull donors in and in-kind giving also, just based on relationships. And then some of it just asking has been some of that too. So, it is what it is as far as the pandemic, but we are seeing that people are still wanting to help out and help the community.
Let me give you an example of United Way Worldwide. Several years ago, they were tearing down a portion of the building to build a learning center, proper learning center. And so the budget for that capital campaign was about $11 million. So our team did a very good job of identifying Gates Foundation as a very good prospect. Why? Because Mary Gates, Junior Bill Gates' mother, was on the board of Seattle United Way, and she also served on the board of the National United Way. And so we did all the rendering, etc., and presented the proposal to Gates Foundation. with the naming rights, we wanted to name the center as Mary Gates Learning Center. And of course, we got the funding, not all of it, but most of it. So aligning with identifying who would be the right person to go to, that research is really, really important. And how are they emotionally connected to our mission? That's important.
Roma, there's a question from John on use of media to create awareness and momentum.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, in the communication plan, there have to be different elements to the plan, including media, social media, print media. I have seen that press conferences are a very good way to bring everybody under one roof and send the same message. Social media definitely right now is taking precedence, and so you have to put yourself in the shoes of a recipient or a potential donor. So your plan has to look at an individual. So for example, me, so I am emotionally connected to issues related to education, let's say, okay? So if you start sending me emails every month, and if you start sending me, and you're also writing blogs and you sending me blogs, the same thing is going on Twitter, the same thing is going on, other boards, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to put your emails into a trash folder. So you have to time your strategy and your outreach based on how you would feel if somebody was targeting you all the time. And one thing I also like to say is people are not ATMs. So you can't keep asking for money in every outreach. You have to first build your relationship. You have to first tell them what you're doing, who you are, and what you're doing. So like I said, you have to send 4 different messages throughout the year, at least 3 messages throughout the year before the 4th message or 5th message when you actually ask for money. So if people don't know, so you assume that people, and of course there are ways to measure how many people have opened your email, what people are opening or not reading, or etc. Based on that data, is how you would build your pitch, towards the end of the year or around Thanksgiving, which is appropriate. For the Indian community, I have seen the Festival of Lights, Diwali is an appropriate time to make the ask. So, so that strategy has to be developed into a plan. It has to be laid out. It has to be thought through and very intentional. It cannot be, one time somebody felt like talking about something and you send it off. That doesn't work.
Roma, we're about out of time. So would you toggle to that last? Oh, go ahead.
Just wanted to emphasize here, if you don't know where you're going, you'll never get there. So we need to know where we're going. And so planning is going to be really, really important. I also added some topics over here. And these are only few topics that, that we talked about: the prospect recognition architecture, annual communication plan, board engagement plan, corporate to affinity and major gifts, high wealth individual, etc. These are all other trainings, other opportunities that we can talk about. And again, if you need help with any of these pieces, or even in building a fundraising plan, which is usually a two-day thing, that we can talk about that.
Great. So for those of you that are out there, please put in your chat other topics of interest to you. because we are building out the Breakthrough Series for the year. Our next Breakthrough Series workshop is Unconscious Bias in the Workplace. Dr. Mindy Anderson and Mario Pyle will be facilitating that, and it's going to be on February 26th. So please register for that. Please share that. It is one of the topics that is a hot topic right now in really having people understand what are those things that we all have, but how are they affecting us both negatively and positively in the workplace. So please, please join us for that. But if you're looking for other specific topics that you would like our impact team to address, please feel free to put that in the chat. And then last but not least, we do have this impact team, and we've got about 4 of the members on this call right now. And I think Dr. Mindy is on here, Lorraine Laurie, Johanna Osland, and of course, Roma. And we have deep expertise in a lot of different areas that we can deploy into especially the for-profit, corporate, and government sectors. So if you will help us get the word out about that, then we can do more of these things for free. So we appreciate you. We hope that you have a wonderful day. And if you have any feedback for us, please feel free to email us. And will you put that email address up on the screen for me, Roma? Feel free to email us at info@Idaho Partners for Good. And
Okay, how do I do that?
it should be the last slide. Is there, maybe that's,
here we go.
there we go. All right, there's our email address. You can sign up for our newsletter, and you can visit us and see more about the impact team at www.idahopartnersforgood.org. Again, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us. We are a very scrappy group of people who are starting this movement to transform the way that people give in Idaho. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.